A bewitching disaster. Isabella knew the exact moment her life had become complicated. It was the day Sir Gabriel rode into the bustling market square. Standing by a flower stall beneath the noonday sun, she felt her heart falter, like a crack in the otherwise diamond-hard shield she'd built around herself. Even from a distance, he radiated warmth and confidence without the puffed-up vanity she'd come to expect from gallivanting knights. That was also the day she resolved to do something she had never done before: fall in love, without the aid of magic. For most of her life, Isabella's presence had triggered all manner of unwanted attention. Men fell over themselves to offer her jewels, poems, songs. Some even threatened epic duels, hoping to catch her favor. She could have endured a gaggle of admirers if only they were sincere. But her beauty was so far beyond the realm of normal that it drove many men into a frenzy. They saw only a flawless face and an aura of mysterious power they couldn't begin to comprehend. It had taken Isabella years to master the perfect concealment spell. But once she had it figured out, her life changed, overnight. Simply by murmuring a brief incantation each morning, her gilded hair became a nondescript brown. Her deep violet eyes faded to muddy gray, and the luminous glow of her skin dulled like tarnished silver. Dull, average, unremarkable. A blessing, really, in its own ironic way. In this form, she could pass through cities and villages, buy groceries, visit libraries, and even wander the countryside without any man so much as tipping his hat. At least, not with desperate adoration. And Isabella found peace in that. No more pointless serenades beneath her window. No more bickering among knights competing for her attention. But then, Sir Gabriel. Isabella first caught sight of him when he rode in with a small contingent of other knights. They were dusty from travel, wearing armor that shone a little less for the wear. Yet in spite of his tired appearance, Sir Gabriel carried himself with a gentle dignity. He was polite when dismounting, gesturing for a stable boy to take his horse, and then bowing in gratitude. Not a single brash boast or conceited glance at his reflection in a shop window. Instead, he offered the stable boy extra coins for his trouble. The boy's eyes lit up, and that genuine act of kindness melted Isabella's heart in a way nothing else ever had. She recognized that budding emotion as both dangerous and thrilling. She had never wanted a man before, not in any real sense. Beauty had always been a tool for her, something to weaponize or conceal, but never truly share. Her heart gave another uneasy flutter when Sir Gabriel passed by, exchanging cordial smiles with villagers. All at once, she realized she wanted to know everything about this quiet, noble man. She wanted to see if his soul was as pure as his outward display suggested. Yet that desire spiked her anxiety to an unbearable degree. If she approached him as her true self, she could charm him without effort. But that would defeat the entire purpose. She wanted real affection, not the puppetry that came from her spells. It would be so much simpler to tip a few choice enchantments into a cup of ale and watch him fall head over heels. But no. Isabella had sworn off that path. She was determined to see if her heart could connect with another's without supernatural trickery. She told herself it would be easy, which of course was a lie. The first time Isabella tried to speak with Sir Gabriel, she disguised herself in her usual fashion. Mousy brown hair, slight freckles, unremarkable eyes. She thought if she pretended to be a wandering scribe, someone who needed night stories for her records, she could strike up a simple conversation. It worked well enough, until it didn't. She found him browsing through a blacksmith stall examining new horseshoes. "Pardon me, Sir Knight," she said, clearing her throat. "May I have a moment of your time?" "Of course," came his calm reply. "How can I help you?" That calm smile nearly broke her concentration. She stumbled over her words. I'm a traveling historian," she lied unconvincingly. "I record the deeds of honorable knights for, posterity." He tilted his head. One dark eyebrow rose, a hint of amusement flickering across his features. "That's quite a noble pursuit," Sir Gabriel replied. "You must gather many interesting tales." "Oh, loads of them. Spoken to hundreds of knights. Ferocious battles, princess rescues, the usual. It took her about 3 seconds to realize she'd just insulted knights by implying they were all cliché. Sir Gabriel merely laughed softly. We do have a knack for dramatic stories. Isabella coughed, searching her mind for the next question. So, what do you look for in she stammered, in a prospective, woman? Pardon? His grin widened, though he made no move to step away. Isabella's cheeks heated. She tried to pivot her line of questioning. I mean, in your knightly adventures, do you favor dragons over trolls? Or rescuing maidens from towers? I suppose that depends, he said carefully. Some knights prefer the glory of slaying fearsome beasts. Others might relish rescuing helpless ladies. And you? Which do you prefer? I prefer to help those in need, be they maiden or villager. In truth, not all who need help are locked in towers. Her heart gave that maddening flutter again. She wanted to ask more, to really get to know him. But panic seized her chest. She realized she hadn't even introduced herself properly. A meltdown threatened. Thank you for your time, she blurted and dashed away, ignoring his gentle attempt to say something else. She ran, cheeks burning, cursing her inability to remain calm under the new and terrifying concept of real attraction. The sense of mortification grew tenfold upon remembering that he'd never actually given her permission to use his stories for any historical record, and that she had left without collecting a single detail. Not willing to accept defeat, Isabella devised a second plan. She would simply be where Sir Gabriel was, again and again, until it felt normal. Then she would gently shift the conversation to more personal matters. After all, if they saw each other often, he might grow more comfortable and reveal himself, his passions, his hopes, his dreams. The next morning, she stationed herself in the courtyard of the local inn, where Sir Gabriel was lodging. She hid behind a little orchard, waiting for him to come out for a morning stroll. But after an hour, she got restless and decided to peek into the inn stable. Maybe he was checking on his horse first? Sure enough, he was there. Sir Gabriel stood at the entrance, brushing his magnificent dapple-gray mare. The scene was far more intimate than she expected. There was a gentle affection in the way he cared for the animal, patting its flank and murmuring sweet nothings that set her heart ablaze. Gathering her courage, she decided it was as good a time as any to appear. Oh, she exclaimed, stepping forward as if just noticing him. Hello again, Sir Gabriel. What a surprise to find you here. He turned, and that flicker of humor touched his face again. Good morning, I think I recall you from yesterday, the, traveling historian. Yes, that's me, she said, forcing a smile. She tried to lean casually against a post. I was just in the area. Crash. She hadn't noticed the metal bucket resting precariously on top of some stacked crates. When she leaned against the post, she jostled the crates and the bucket tumbled down, right onto her head. She yelped, half blinded by falling water and the clang of iron. Sir Gabriel gently lifted the bucket of her, eyes wide with concern. Are you all right? He asked. She tried to regain composure, though her hair was drenched and a bruise formed on her forehead. Of course, she lied, forcing a bright laugh. Completely fine. Happens all the time. Then, realizing what she'd just said, she cringed. Happens all the time? Buckets falling on her head? By the startled way he regarded her, she might as well have grown a second nose. I should get going, she stammered. Busy schedule, you know. So many nights, to interview. With that, she nearly tripped over her own feet in her haste to exit the stable. Her cloak caught on a stray nail, ripping a long, ragged tear that left her face burning with embarrassment. She didn't dare look back at Sir Gabriel, who must have been either worried or thoroughly entertained. Possibly both. 2 days later, Isabella paced restlessly in her small rented room, replaying every humiliating moment in her mind. She was certain Sir Gabriel found her odd, perhaps even suspicious. If he had any inclination to open up, she had definitely sabotaged it. Her reflection in the mirror offered a plain face, her daily disguise. Perhaps it wasn't plain enough. She began tinkering with her concealment spell, adding a few subtle illusions that would give her minor flaws. Small blemishes, frizzy hair, maybe a crooked tooth. She reasoned that if she looked less put together, no one would suspect she was anything other than an ordinary peasant woman. And if no one expected anything from her, it might soothe the pressure she felt around him. It was the wildest plan, but she was desperate. She spent the morning reciting incantations, layering illusions until her reflection looked like a complete mess. Her hair was so frizzy it resembled a cloud of tangles. Her complexion covered in random sunspots, and one of her front teeth now overlapped another. She studied the result with a mix of horror and relief. This had to keep men away, except maybe Sir Gabriel, who seemed to appreciate kindness over superficial appearances. She hoped. That afternoon, she ventured downstairs. People glanced her way, some pitying her disheveled look, others shrugging as if to say, "Poor dear." Gone were the double takes of knights or lecherous glares from random bystanders. Good. She ordered a simple meal, fully intending to keep an ear out for Sir Gabriel's presence. According to rumor, he was staying at the inn another few days before traveling on. Sure enough, halfway through her meal, Sir Gabriel entered with a friend, another knight named Roderick. Isabella's heart pounded. She tried to look busy, fiddling with her spoon and peering into her soup as if it contained the secrets of the universe. "Is that you?" a soft voice asked. "Our traveling historian?" She glanced up, half choking on her spoon. Sir Gabriel stood by her table, wearing the same polite smile, though confusion flickered in his eyes. His companion lingered near the bar, making idle conversation with the innkeeper. Isabella swallowed nervously. "Oh yes, hello," she managed, remembering too late that she now looked drastically different. You look, well," he said, obviously searching for the right words. "Oh, I've just had a rough morning," she lied. "Haven't had time to tidy up." "Is your head all right?" he asked, gesturing vaguely to her hair. "After the bucket incident?" She nearly sank into her seat, mortified at the memory. "I'm fine, thank you for asking and for your help back then." "It was my pleasure." A second of silence. She decided to press on no matter how awkward. "Sir Gabriel, can I ask, where are you headed after your stay here?" He rested a hand on the chair across from her. "Might I sit?" he asked gently. "Oh, of course." While he lowered himself onto the rickety chair, she tucked a stray lock of frizz behind her ear and tried to keep her illusions in place. Her mind buzzed with 1,000 questions. Meanwhile, Sir Gabriel simply regarded her with that quiet calm she was coming to associate with him. "My order plans to ride toward the western provinces," he said. "We've heard rumors of bandits raiding small villages there, so we want to offer protection if possible." Isabella's heart soared. Bravery and kindness all rolled into one. She'd never met a man so selfless. "That's very noble," she murmured. I'd like to hear more about your journeys, if you don't mind." "Certainly, and what of you?" he asked, turning the question on her. "Where does your profession take you next?" She froze, remembering her traveling historian lie. She scrambled for words. "Oh, I travel wherever there are stories to be told. If knights are heading west, maybe I'll go that way too." A glimmer of something flashed in his eyes, but it was gone before she could interpret it. "Well," he said quietly, "it might be interesting to have a historian along, if she can avoid falling buckets." She realized he was teasing, and a bubble of laughter escaped her. The tension cracked, giving way to a moment of genuine connection. She felt her heart drumming wildly. Was he inviting her to join them? But before she could accept, the knight Roderick called out, "Gabriel, come here and settle a wager." Sir Gabriel rose, offering Isabella a polite farewell. "I suppose I should handle this." He paused. "I'll be here tomorrow morning, if you wish to continue our conversation." And just like that, he was gone, leaving Isabella in a daze of hope, relief, and absolute, fluttering excitement. That night, Isabella could hardly sleep. She turned over 1,000 possibilities in her mind. Perhaps she would tag along on the night's journey, observing from a safe distance. Then maybe, by offering small helps, mending clothes, cooking, or assisting with local knowledge, she could ease into Sir Gabriel's good graces naturally, all while continuing to hide her true power. At dawn, however, she encountered an unexpected hitch in her plan. A pair of mercenaries who were rummaging around the inn courtyard, bragging loudly about collecting rare magical artifacts. Isabella's ears perked up when she heard mention of witches, relics, and bounty. She stilled in the shadows, straining to listen. "Heard rumors of a powerful enchantress in these parts," one mercenary muttered to the other. "They say she's got illusions that could fool the devil himself. We capture her, we'll be rich beyond measure." Isabella's heart pounded. She'd always been cautious to avoid detection, but it seemed her name, her legend, still leaked out in whispers. She would have to be careful that no one recognized her as the witch they sought. In that moment, she realized one more obstacle. If the mercenaries found out she was traveling with Sir Gabriel, they'd suspect her disguise, or worse, use him as bait. That thought made her blood boil with protectiveness. She couldn't let any harm befall the knight who was quickly stealing her heart. The next day, Isabella returned to the inn's common area, illusions intact, only to see Roderick near the door, rummaging through saddlebags. Sir Gabriel was nowhere in sight. "Morning," Isabella ventured softly, hoping not to startle him. "Is Sir Gabriel around?" Roderick gave her an appraising look. "You're that historian, aren't you? He's outside, fetching water from the well. You can wait for him if you like." She offered a polite nod and headed out. The air was crisp and she caught sight of Sir Gabriel in the distance turning the crank of a well's rope. His hair, golden in the sunlight, ruffled slightly in the morning breeze. Her heart felt too large for her chest. "Sir Gabriel," she called. He turned, that quiet warmth lighting his expression. "Good morning. Did you rest well?" "I did, thank you." She approached, hands clasped, nerves prickling. "I've been thinking," she began, "about your journey west. If you truly wouldn't mind, I thought I might travel nearby, in case you or the other knights have interesting stories to share." He studied her face for a moment before answering. "I'd like that, but it's not a safe road. We'll be investigating bandit attacks. Having a historian so close to danger is—" "I can handle myself," she blurted too quickly. He chuckled, arching a brow. "I see. Well then, I'd be glad for your company. Just be prepared for long days and rough accommodations." "I'm used to traveling," she assured him, feeling a wave of relief. A comfortable silence passed as she watched him haul water. Despite his strong build and well-honed muscles, there was a gentleness to his motions. She found her gaze drifting helplessly over him, only to remember that her illusions were starting to fray at the edges. Maintaining them through high emotions was tricky. Already she felt a surge of warmth in her cheeks that threatened her disguise. "Is something wrong?" he asked, noticing her distraction. "No, just, lost in thought." She forced a weak laugh. Her illusions stabilized, but not without a quiet effort of will. If she wasn't careful, her hair might shimmer back to its original glossy length, or her eyes might flash violet in the sunlight. "Well," Sir Gabriel said, setting the water pail down, "we plan to depart tomorrow at sunrise. If you're coming, make sure you have enough provisions. The road is harsh." "I will," she promised. "Thank you." He nodded, but just as he turned, she seized a moment of boldness. "Sir Gabriel, would you like to take a short walk with me around the orchard before your duties?" For a second, he seemed pleasantly surprised, then a gentle smile dawned on his face. "I'd like that." Their walk was the most nerve-wracking half-hour of Isabella's life. Every time she tried to break into casual conversation, her words came out forced or, worse, muddled with her own flustered laughter. She asked about his childhood. He spoke of growing up on a small farm before training to be a knight. She asked about his parents. He told her his mother was a seamstress who taught him humility and compassion. All the while, the orchard's blossoms fell around them like pink snow, and Isabella felt transported into an enchanted wonderland, even though for once it was not her magic making it so. Halfway through, they passed a beehive hidden in the branches. Sir Gabriel gently guided her aside before the buzzing swarm grew agitated, placing a steadying hand on her elbow. A jolt of electricity shot through her. She had never been so attuned to another person's warmth. She found herself imagining how different this moment would be if she revealed her real face, her real self. But each time she suppressed the urge, reminding herself of the vow she'd made. No spells, no illusions. Real love, or none at all. "You're quite observant," he noted, when she stopped to admire a cluster of blossoms. "For someone traveling alone, that must come in handy." "Yes," she said softly. "I try not to miss the small things. They're often the most important." He nodded thoughtfully, and for an instant she sensed a deeper meaning in his expression, like he might have been speaking about her illusions. But maybe that was just her imagination. The next morning, Isabella joined Sir Gabriel and his fellow knights on the western road. She stayed toward the rear, hoping to avoid too many prying questions from Roderick or the others. Her disguise was holding, but she remained on edge. Bandits or no bandits, the journey began uneventfully enough. They passed meadows, small villages, farmland. Sir Gabriel rode near the front, occasionally glancing back to ensure she was safe. Each time he did, her heart did a little flip. On the third day, trouble found them in the form of a narrow pass. A group of ruffians ambushed them with crude weapons and crossbows, demanding gold. The knights responded valiantly, forming a protective circle around Isabella before she could protest. Fear thrummed in her veins, not for herself, but for Sir Gabriel. Her protective instincts roared, urging her to unleash a spell that would scatter the bandits like leaves in the wind. But she held herself back. This was a chance to see Sir Gabriel in his true element, to see that unwavering courage she admired, and he didn't disappoint. "Stand down," he commanded the bandits. "We travel with no ill will, but if you insist on violence, we are well prepared." A bandit lunged with a sword. Sir Gabriel deftly parried, forcing the attacker to stumble. Another came from behind, and Gabriel spun, disarming him with swift precision. Everywhere, the knights moved in practiced unison, subduing the bandits with minimal bloodshed. By the time the dust cleared, half the attackers had fled, while the rest were tied up, left for local authorities to handle. Isabella watched from her safe vantage. Her chest ached with relief and admiration. She was halfway convinced to drop her illusions on the spot, run to him, and confess her feelings. But then she remembered the danger of the mercenaries who still prowled these lands, seeking a powerful witch. And what if Sir Gabriel felt betrayed that she'd hidden her identity for so long? She shook off the impulse. Not yet. She needed to be sure. That evening they made camp near a quiet stream. Isabella gathered kindling while the knights prepared a cook fire. One by one the men retired to their tents, but Sir Gabriel remained, stoking the flames and tending to the horses. Isabella took a seat on a fallen log, trying not to stare too obviously at him. He glanced over, giving her a faint smile. "Are you all right?" he asked. "You seemed troubled during the fight." She swallowed hard. "I'm fine," she managed. "Just not used to such danger up close, I suppose. If it's too much, I can arrange for you to travel back. I wouldn't want you to be unsafe." She shook her head. "No, I'm actually grateful you let me come. I've learned so much. Knights aren't always arrogant, are they?" He chuckled. "Some are, but I try to remember why I became a knight in the first place." "And why was that?" He paused, gaze drifting to the flickering embers. "For a time, I witnessed injustice in my home village, brutality from bandits, even from other knights who let power corrupt them. I promised myself I'd do better if I ever wore armor. My mother taught me that true strength must serve those who cannot protect themselves. Tears pricked Isabella's eyes. She turned her head so he wouldn't see. That's beautiful, she said softly. He offered a kind smile. Forgive me if it sounds idealistic. No, it sounds right. A gentle silence settled between them. Isabella's heart thumped, stirring up an impulse to scoot closer. She opened her mouth, about to ask him something more personal, when a loud snore erupted from one of the sleeping knights, breaking the moment. Sir Gabriel laughed quietly, and she couldn't help joining him, the tension melting into a shared, amused bond. Over the next week, their journey continued through forests and rolling hills, each day punctuated by small skirmishes with scattered bandits. Isabella watched Sir Gabriel fight, negotiate, and often spare men who might have deserved harsher punishment. Each time he displayed a compassion that left her breathless. In quiet moments they shared jokes and personal stories, his love of reading, her invented passion for scribing. Occasionally, she forgot the disguise entirely. She felt so at ease with him that the illusion sometimes slipped. A few times, she caught the corners of her hair shifting from dull brown to a glossy black, or glimpsed her eyes flicker a hint of amethyst. She quickly mumbled an incantation, hoping no one noticed. All the while, her romantic feelings intensified, sometimes overwhelming her with the sheer force of wanting to be seen by him, truly seen. On the 10th night, after another minor bandit altercation, Isabella found herself alone with Sir Gabriel at a rickety roadside inn. The rest of the knights had gone ahead to secure lodging in the next village, leaving just the two of them to finalize some arrangements with the local guard. They sat near a roaring fireplace in the inn's main hall, sipping hot tea. Rain lashed against the windows, the sound oddly cozy. "You're soaked," Sir Gabriel said, noticing her damp cloak. "Let's move closer to the fire." She nodded, shuffling nearer to the flames, relishing the warmth. Her illusions were once again precarious after days of exhaustion and emotional strain. She pressed her palms against her temples, feeling the hum of her magical energies. Just a little more effort to maintain the ordinary facade. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, taking a seat beside her. The orange glow danced across the planes of his face, making him look achingly handsome. "I'm just tired," she whispered. He studied her with concern, then reached out as if to brush a stray lock of hair from her eyes. She tensed, terrified that his touch might disrupt her illusions. If he moved that lock of hair, he'd see it shift in color. But there was nowhere to run without looking suspicious. She began, desperate to distract him. "Yes?" he asked gently, his fingertips catching the edge of her hair. She could feel her illusion slip, shifting her hair to a deeper, more lustrous shade. Panic shot through her. In that instant, a clap of thunder rattled the inn. Candlelight flickered and a burst of rowdy travelers entered, shouting for ale. Sir Gabriel drew back, startled, and the moment passed. Isabella's illusion settled back into place. She silently breathed a prayer of thanks to the storm for its timely interference. Yet Sir Gabriel's gaze lingered a moment longer, as though trying to puzzle something out. "I'll go secure us a room for the night," he said at last. "We can decide our next move in the morning." "Yes," she murmured, pulse racing. "Thank you." The next morning the storm had cleared, leaving a golden sunrise. Isabella and Sir Gabriel set off to rejoin the other knights. Their path wound along a riverbank, bright and full of chirping birds. They never reached the next village. Two figures emerged from behind a cluster of rocks, faces obscured by dark hoods, crossbows drawn. Isabella recognized them instantly, the mercenaries who'd been gossiping about a powerful witch back at the inn. She felt her stomach plummet. Had they tracked her? Or were they simply taking advantage of an isolated pair of travelers? "Hand over your valuables," one snarled, leveling a crossbow. The other aimed at Sir Gabriel's horse. Sir Gabriel responded calmly, his posture shifting into a defensive stance. "We have no quarrel with you. Step aside." "We know who you are." The second mercenary spat. voice tinged with excitement. "Knight, and your companion, the witch. We've heard tales of her illusions. Hand her over, or this ends badly for you." Isabella's blood turned cold. Sir Gabriel's gaze snapped to her. Confusion etched on his face. She clutched at her illusions, trying not to let them unravel. "You're mistaken," he said firmly. "She's just a scribe." "She's no scribe," the mercenary barked, "and we'll collect a bounty for her capture." Sir Gabriel drew his sword, determined. "You're wrong." "It's not safe," Isabella whispered. "Sir Gabriel, please." But her pleas were drowned out by the clash of steel. The mercenaries attacked, and Gabriel defended himself valiantly. The crossbow bolt whizzed by, narrowly missing him. Isabella's heart thundered. These mercenaries wanted her. If they took him down first? Her choice was brutal but clear. She couldn't watch Sir Gabriel get wounded, or worse, for a cause he didn't fully understand. She had to use her magic. With a trembling breath, Isabella let her illusions unravel. Her hair shimmered from drab brown to midnight black with streaks of violet. Her eyes burned brilliant amethyst. The sun caught her skin, radiant as polished marble. She raised her hands, channeling the power that coursed through her veins like wildfire. A blast of emerald energy swept forward, knocking the mercenaries off their feet. Their crossbows flew from their hands, clattering to the ground. She didn't kill them. She wasn't a monster. But she rendered them unconscious, ensuring they wouldn't harm Sir Gabriel or anyone else anytime soon. When she turned to face Sir Gabriel, fear pounded in her chest. She half expected him to recoil in horror. Instead, he slowly lowered his sword, eyes wide, but not unkind. "Isabella," he said quietly, tasting her real name for the first time. She swallowed. "Yes, I'm sorry, There's so much to explain." His expression flickered with confusion, betrayal, and a glint of awe. You're the witch they spoke of." "I never meant to deceive you," she rushed, tears stinging her eyes. "I wanted to see if someone could care for me, not for magic or beauty, but for me. I disguised myself. I didn't realize those men would—" "Isabella," he murmured again, stepping forward, "you saved my life. But I lied to you. You must be furious. I've made a mockery of everything." He sheathed his sword, gaze flicking from the unconscious mercenaries back to her. "I'm surprised," he admitted, voice trembling slightly. "But I'm not angry. Not in the way you might fear." "You're not—" He shook his head, stepping closer still. "I knew there was something more to you than what you showed. Your questions, your abrupt disappearances, the odd mishaps. I couldn't quite piece it together. But I saw a good heart. Kindness. That was never an illusion." His words tore down her defenses in a rush. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She had never imagined acceptance would feel so heartbreaking and so liberating. "I never wanted to lie," she choked out. "But I've been hiding for so long. Men lusted after my beauty or cowered from my magic. You were different. Her voice wavered, raw with emotion. Sir Gabriel removed a leather glove and gently touched her cheek, brushing away a tear. That single point of contact sent warmth flooding through her veins. "I don't know what all this means," he said softly, "but I do know I've come to care for you, for the person you are, not some conjured image." Her heart soared, the weight of secrecy lifting. She turned her face into his palm, reveling in the simple honesty of it. "Thank you," she whispered, "thank you." Relief, passion, and weeks of pent-up longing converged in a dizzying swell. Isabella stepped closer, and he didn't pull away. Their breaths mingled in the warm morning air. A hush fell over the clearing as even the birds seemed to hold their song. Tentatively, her hands rose to his shoulders where she felt the solid press of armor. He drew her near. She could see the reflection of her true self in his eyes that didn't show fear or revulsion, but gentle admiration. "I've wanted to hold you like this," he confessed, "since I first saw you." A rush of emotion welled in her throat. "And I've wanted to let you," she breathed, tears returning. Their lips met in a soft, tender kiss, one that stole her very breath. Isabella's knees turned to water and she clung to his armor for support. Sir Gabriel's hand cradled the back of her head, fingers tangling in her midnight hair as though marveling at its texture. She felt the world around them vanish, replaced only by the sense of his lips against hers, the taste of salt and sweet relief. When they finally parted, she pressed her forehead to his, inhaling the scent of sweat, metal, and that indefinable essence of him. Her illusions were gone. She was entirely, achingly vulnerable, and it felt good. "I'm yours," she whispered, voice trembling, "if you'll have me." He smiled gently, cupping her cheek again. "I'm only a knight," he said softly, "and you're a woman of remarkable gifts. Are you sure you'd want someone as ordinary as me?" "Ordinary?" She laughed, the sound colored by joyous tears. "You're the bravest, kindest man I've ever known. I'm the one who's unworthy." He shook his head, leaning in to capture her mouth again. This kiss was deeper, infused with the raw emotion they'd both been struggling to hide. Isabella wrapped her arms around his neck, her body pressing closer, wanting to feel every steady beat of his heart. A swirl of magic flickered at her fingertips, not to enchant him, but simply because her emotions were so powerful they poured out in shimmering sparks. "Your magic," he murmured into her lips, "it's incredible." "It's nothing compared to you," she answered, voice husky. They stood like that for an endless moment, letting every suppressed feeling bloom. Isabella's body tingled, her skin alive with sensation. Sir Gabriel's fingers brushed her waist, gathering the folds of her cloak, and she wondered how a single touch could ignite such fire within her. She trembled with need, longing to be closer still. "I want to know everything about you," he breathed, his hand stroking up her arm, leaving goosebumps in its wake. "Every secret you've had to hide." She nodded, tears filling her eyes again. I'll tell you everything, and I'll never hide from you again." They surrendered to the intensity of the moment, tongues exploring, bodies pressed intimately together under the dappled sunlight. A hush of wind rustled the leaves, carrying away the last echoes of fear and doubt. In that clearing, they forged a bond that needed no spells or illusions, only the unguarded truth of their hearts.